They laughed when he humiliated her. The lights, the cameras, the wealthy crowd. Everyone froze as the city's most arrogant billionaire hair grabbed the hem of a simple woman's skirt and yanked it upward, just to mock her. But within minutes, that same bully was trembling, pale, and begging for mercy. Because the quiet man standing behind her wasn't just her husband. He was someone whose reputation could end careers, rewrite fortunes, and change a man's life forever with a single sentence. What happened next would turn an entire gala silent and leave the world talking. Before we dive into this unbelievable, real-life twist of fate, make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Tales and Turns for more gripping stories. And tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Your support helps us bring more stories like this to life. The Royal Sapphire Charity Gala was the kind of place where money didn't just speak. It announced itself with diamonds, designer suits, and the kind of perfume only those with private islands could afford. Among the glimmer, Iva stood quietly near the edge of the ballroom. She wore a modest navy blue dress, her hair pulled back in a simple bun. People glanced at her, but only as one might glance at background decor. She wasn't there to shine. She was there because her husband, Daniel, insisted she deserved a night out. He stood beside her, gentle and attentive, speaking softly as though the world beyond her didn't exist. Across the room, Victor Hargrove, the notorious heir to the Hargrove dynasty, noticed her. Victor was the kind of man who used arrogance as cologne. He'd inherited wealth young, manners never, and he believed humiliation was just another form of entertainment. Tonight, with champagne clouding his already swollen ego, he strutted toward Ava with his entourage trailing behind him, waiting for whatever spectacle he might create next. The crowd knew his patterns. They always ended with laughter for some and quiet shame for others. Ava didn't even notice him approaching until she felt a sudden tug. Quick, sharp, humiliating. Victor's hand had slipped beneath the hem of her skirt and yanked it upward, exposing her legs as gasps erupted around the room. A few people actually laughed, not out of cruelty, but out of shock. Others covered their mouths, pretending not to see. Ava froze, her cheeks burning, her hands trembling so violently, she almost dropped her glass. "Relax," Victor sneered. "Just trying to see if the simple dress matches the simple woman." The smirk on his face told her he thought he'd just performed a harmless joke. Daniel stepped forward, not yelling, not pushing, not raising a hand. No. His reaction was far more unsettling. He placed his coat gently over Ava's shoulders, lowered her skirt with careful respect, and whispered something only she could hear. When he straightened up, his eyes were cold. The kind of cold that didn't shout, but promised consequences deeper than any punch could deliver. Victor chuckled, expecting a fight, expecting to dominate it. But the moment Daniel looked directly at him, Victor's grin faltered, as though he recognized someone he never expected to meet. The whispers began instantly. People leaned in toward one another, murmuring Daniel's name like it was a myth suddenly proven true. Daniel Everett was not just a devoted husband. He was a retired military strategist whose negotiations had ended international conflicts, reshaped corporate empires, and saved reputations of CEOs who had begged for his guidance. He was a man whose silence carried the weight of a verdict. Victor swallowed hard, feeling the room's energy shift. His entourage stepped back, their smirks evaporating as they realized whom their friend had just humiliated. Daniel didn't yell. Instead, he stepped close enough that Victor could smell the calm on him. The unnerving, deadly calm of someone who knew exactly how to dismantle a life without ever lifting a hand. "Do you think that was funny?" he asked quietly. Victor's voice caught in his throat. He'd faced reporters, competitors, and courtrooms, but nothing compared to the stillness in Daniel's eyes. "It was a joke," he stammered. The crowd had gone silent by now, watching, waiting. Even the orchestra seemed to have paused mid-note. Then Daniel did something no one expected. Instead of threatening Victor, he asked him a single question that pierced through every layer of his arrogance. What happened to you that made you think hurting others would make you powerful? The room exhaled collectively. Victor blinked in confusion, unable to process a confrontation that wasn't fueled by rage, but by a terrifying clarity. Daniel wasn't there to punish him. He was there to strip away the false armor Victor had worn his whole life. And in that moment, Victor broke. His knees wobbled. His voice cracked. The mask of confidence he'd worn for years dissolved as he muttered, I don't know. With the crowd watching, Daniel led Victor aside, not to humiliate him, but to force him to confront the broken pieces he'd been hiding behind wealth and cruelty. He told him about the weight of choices, the cost of disrespect, and the future he was crafting with every action, good or bad. Something in Victor cracked open. It was the first time in years someone spoke to him not with hatred or fear, but with an honesty that hit him harder than any physical retaliation ever could. Tears welled in his eyes, not out of guilt alone, but out of the realization that he no longer wanted to be the man he had just been. Minutes later, Victor returned to the crowd and did something no one, not even his own family, had ever seen him do. He apologized, publicly, sincerely, repeatedly. Not the shallow apology of a cornered billionaire, but the trembling admission of a man seeing himself clearly for the first time. He approached Ava, voice shaking as he said, I'm so sorry. You didn't deserve that. No one does. Ava, shaken but supported by Daniel's steady hand, nodded politely. She didn't need revenge. She had dignity, and a husband who protected it not with violence, but with wisdom. The gala continued, but something had shifted. People treated Ava differently, not because she had wealth or status, but because they had seen her strength and Daniel's dignity. And Victor, he disappeared for a month. Then reports surfaced of him donating millions to anti-harassment organizations, funding programs for victims, and attending therapy quietly, consistently. His life didn't just change in that moment. It transformed. Not from fear, but from finally understanding what respect truly meant. And Ava, she never saw herself as simple again. That night taught her that dignity doesn't require diamonds, and power isn't measured in voices raised, but in voices that remain steady when the world expects them to break. She walked out of the gala, not embarrassed, but empowered, because the man who humiliated her ended up humbled, and the man who loved her changed a life not through force, but through truth. And the crowd. They carried that moment with them, whispering for years about the night when a simple woman and her calm, unshakable husband brought an entire room to silence and reminded everyone what real strength looks like.